Welcome to the Living a Nordic Life podcast, where we explore a simpler, cosier and more intentional life the Nordic way. I'm Fiona McKenna, your Nordic living guide and founder of Living a Nordic Life, where I share all things Nordic living and show you that a Nordic life is the way to bring intentional calm and healthy habits into your own life, wherever you are in the world. Are you looking for ways to bring simplicity, coziness and calm into your life? Well, let me show you how. Visit the Living a Nordic Life website to explore how I can help you on your journey to simple, healthy and happy calm, the Nordic way. You can subscribe to the podcast right here. And if you want regular inspirational emails sent with love from Norway and straight to your inbox, don't forget to subscribe to the Living a Nordic Life newsletters. And so now let's dive into our episode. Hello. There is a question that has been quietly sitting in the back of my mind for a long time. Could I ever leave Norway? Not should I leave Norway, not would I leave Norway, but could I? Because when you've lived somewhere for 10 years, it stops being simply a country that you live in. It becomes part of you. Norway's been my home since 2016. It's where our children have grown up, and it's where we've built our routines, our friendships, our memories, and in many ways our identity as a family. It's a place that's taught me how to slow down. It's taught me that you don't always have to fill the weekend with activities, and that going outside can be an activity in itself. And that something like a thermos of coffee or some hot soup, a blanket to sit on, and somewhere beautiful to look at a view can be enough. It gave me friluftsliv, that love of the outdoors. And it gave me a different understanding of what a good life can look like. It doesn't have to be material and it doesn't have to be a lot of money spent. And yet, I have been wondering what it would be like to leave. And that's a really complicated thing to admit when so much of your life has been built around loving the place you live in. For years, I've talked about Nordic living. I've written about Norway, Norwegian traditions, the seasons, the food, the simplicity, and all the things that I've learnt from living here, like how to love the winter, for example. So sometimes I wonder whether people would think I'd somehow failed if I eventually left. As though loving Norway means that you have to stay forever. But perhaps it doesn't work like that. Perhaps somewhere can change you without you needing to have it as your forever home. And this is something that I talk about a lot, that you don't have to live in a place to love it or for it to be part of your life. And I think that is one of the things I'm beginning to understand myself. When we first moved here, Norway felt like an adventure. We'd been back and forth, as I'm sure you know, for a lot of years. But as the kids got a little bit older, we decided that it would be good to live here. Everything was new, even though, we had been back and forth, but living in a place is not the same as visiting. The landscape was extraordinary. It's a bit like Scotland on steroids. The snow seemed magical. And even going to the supermarket involved discovering something unfamiliar. And then slowly it became normal. It was just life. The mountains became part of the background. The darkness of winter became something I knew how to navigate and how to embrace. The language became less frightening and the customs became familiar. They became part of our family customs. And Norway became home. But home can be complicated too, because sometimes you can love somewhere and still wonder whether you belong there. I think many people who've moved countries will understand this, that there's this strange feeling that comes with living between two places because you still have your upbringing. You aren't quite the person you were before you left, but you aren't entirely Norwegian either. You carry pieces of your old life with you. And then you collect pieces of your new life and it kind of becomes this, intricate puzzle. And eventually you become something in between. And it can feel odd sometimes to go home, use the word in inverted commas, which is something that we felt last year when we went back to England, because we hadn't been back for quite a while and everything was very busy. And we had quite a bit of reverse culture shock because we're from a place that is quite quiet. So it was odd, really odd feeling. But England is still part of my picture. There are things that I do miss. I miss my family. I miss my friends. I miss that kind of familiarity that you have with the place that you've grown up in. The certain foods that you have, the humour and the banter. If you don't know what banter is, if you're not British, it's that kind of chat back and forth that you have with people who you might just pass on the street, or somebody who serves you in a shop, or somebody you accidentally nudge, as you're passing. And it's a bit of humour, and it's a very British thing. It's quite often a bit cheeky, or, there's always something, that is funny about it, but it's slightly uplifting. And I do miss that, I have to say, because you don't get that here in Norway. But it's also that feeling of knowing how things work without having to think too much about them. And this is something I feel an awful lot about school with the kids, because I am asking endless questions all the time of their teachers, the school secretary, the school advisor, everybody. How does this work? Because the information isn't offered to you, or very often it isn't offered to you. You really have to dig. And as a foreigner, that can be quite tiring, I have to say, when you look around and everybody seems to know what to do. At the moment, we're navigating bus cards, and everybody seems to know how to do that, except me. And I didn't realise that when they started high school, which my two eldest, one is in second year of high school and the other one's just started, that you had to reapply for bus cards. I thought it rolled over like it did with, the younger kids, but no. So, yeah, we've had a couple of weeks of that. That's been quite hard work. But you don't have those things that you have when you're growing up, that you just know how it works because you've been taught or you've watched how it works, and life is a little bit easier. But perhaps I also wonder if there are tiny things that I didn't realise I would miss until I had been away for years. I've lived in different places, but not for a very long time. So it's always been easy to go back, or there's been a point when I know I will be going back. So being here and it being open-ended is a little bit different. But perhaps most importantly, there's this feeling of being able to imagine a future there. It doesn't mean Norway has stopped being beautiful. It hasn't. I can still walk outside on an ordinary day. How lucky I am to live here. I can still look at the sea and feel something shift inside me. I can still love the Norwegian way of making space for nature, for quiet, and for life outside of work. In fact, that's maybe why the question has been so difficult. Because leaving somewhere that you disliked would be easy, wouldn't it? Leaving somewhere you love is much harder. There's also the practical side of leaving anywhere. You can't simply wake up one morning and decide to move your entire family to another country. It might seem like we did that when we moved here. Maybe we were a little more reckless, I have to say. But we were also part of the EU. Britain was part of the EU, so it was much easier to move between different countries. It's a lot harder now. But there are children that you need to think about. Schools, work, money, housing, paperwork, visas, immigration, family, the timing. And around all that, every single thing has its own timeline. It's like everything has a life of its own, doesn't it? There are 1,000 tiny little pieces that need to all fit together to make something work perfectly. And even when you know something might be the right decision, that doesn't mean it's easy. Sometimes I think we imagine big life changes as moments of uncertainty. We picture someone, or moments of certainty, sorry, not uncertainty. We picture someone standing at a kitchen window, don't we? Kind of looking out. Suddenly they have this light bulb moment. I'm going to move. I'm going to move to so-and-so, somewhere really beautiful with, a lovely library and a nice streets with bookshops and museums and what have you. But I don't think life is usually like that. Sometimes it's quieter, isn't it? We don't really realise that things are happening. And sometimes it's just a question that keeps on returning. What if? What if? What if we went back? What would our life look like? Would we be happier? Would we regret it? Would I miss Norway terribly? Would I look back in 10 years and wish that I had stayed? Or would I look back and wonder why I was so afraid to leave and so afraid to make that step and why it took so long? I don't know. And that perhaps is the honest answer to anybody asking this kind of question. But I have started to think that there is something quite liberating about allowing yourself to ask the question without immediately needing an answer. Maybe you don't have to decide today. Perhaps you can simply imagine another life and see how that feels. You can explore it. You can talk about it. You can see what it feels like when you say the words out loud. We might leave Norway. Even saying that feels a bit strange. We might leave Norway. Because for so long, Norway has been part of the story I've told about my life. It is me. It defines me. It's become my identity. But perhaps the next chapter doesn't have to erase the ones that came before it. Your life is quite often in different lives. You start one chapter. Once that's finished, once that's over, and that chapter is done with you, you can move on to the next bit. But if we do leave, I don't think I would ever stop being grateful for the years that we have spent here. Norway has changed me. It's changed the way I think about time. It's changed the way I think about nature. I used to love nature anyway, but I feel something different with it that I see when I go back to England, that it is not quite so deep, perhaps. And it's changed what I consider important. And perhaps most importantly, it's taught me that a simpler life isn't necessarily about where you live. It's about how you live. That's something I've been thinking about a lot lately. You might notice that from my Facebook posts. I've been asking you as well what you think about it. I would love to hear that. Because when I created Living a Nordic Life, I wanted to share the things that I'd learnt here. That's what motivated me to get started with it. I wanted to share a little bit of my life. I wanted to share the slower mornings, the outdoor life, the cosy evenings, and the traditions, because I saw a lot of other people were interested in that. The idea that we don't need to constantly chase more. We can have enough. And I still believe in all of that. Whether I'm sitting beside a Norwegian fjord or on a cliff top in Dorset. Perhaps living a Nordic life was never really about living in Norway at all. It was about learning to notice what makes life good. And carrying that with you. So could I ever leave Norway? I think perhaps the answer is yes. And saying that doesn't feel like betrayal. It feels like a possibility. I don't know exactly what the future holds. I don't know what our home will look like. I don't know where I'll be sitting when I record episodes of this. But I do know that life changes. Kids grow. Families change. My family's changed a lot in the last year because my dad died last year, so things have changed considerably. And our priorities shift. And sometimes the life that was right for you 10 years ago isn't necessarily the life that will be right for you in 10 years' time. And you are allowed to acknowledge that, and that is allowed to be okay. You don't have to keep things on the same trajectory. It doesn't make that first life wrong. It makes it a bit more exciting, actually, doesn't it? It adds a little bit of spice. It simply means you've grown. So maybe the question isn't really, could I ever leave Norway? Maybe the better question would be, what would I take with me if I did? And I already know that answer. I would take the quiet. I would take the appreciation for nature. I take the long walks that I have. I would take my thermos of coffee, definitely, and my favourite mug, you know which one I'm talking about. I would take the cosy evenings with candlelight. And the belief that an ordinary day can be a beautiful one if we simply look for it. I would take everything that Norway has taught me, and perhaps that is the wonderful thing about home. You can leave a place, but you don't necessarily leave what it gave to you. And maybe, just maybe, that means that wherever life takes us next, a little piece of Norway will always come with me. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the Living a Nordic Life newsletters so you can get an email when I release a new episode. It's a quick and easy way to keep up with all things Nordic living. Please visit livinganordiclife.com. You can listen to Living a Nordic Life on lots of podcast apps, including Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcasts, and plenty of others. If you've enjoyed the Living a Nordic Life podcast, why not leave me a rating? So that's the end of Living a Nordic Life for today, and I look forward to seeing you next time.